The night was brutally cold, the kind of cold that cut through layers and settled in your bones. Downtown traffic had ground to a halt. Headlights blurred across ice-slicked streets like smudged stars as a winter storm tightened its grip on the city. Under the shadow of a highway overpass, the air felt heavier, quieter, save for the occasional honk or the hum of idling engines. Dr. Thomas Reed sat behind the wheel of his black SUV, watching his breath fog the windshield. The city was suffocating in ice, and the snowflakes drifting down were no longer beautiful. They were merciless reminders of a winter that refused to release its hold. He had just left a medical conference uptown where he'd been the keynote speaker, praised for his surgical precision, innovative techniques, and status as one of the country's youngest and most accomplished obstetricians. But at that moment, none of that mattered. He just wanted to get home. Before we continue with today's story, if you're enjoying what you've heard so far, please hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber helps me keep sharing these inspiring tales that touch your day. Thank you for your support. His phone buzzed on the seat beside him. Another congratulatory message. He ignored it, tired and impatient, fingers tapping against the steering wheel. Then something in his peripheral vision made him turn. At the far edge of the sidewalk beneath the overpass lights, a figure crumpled near the guardrail. For a second, he thought it was a pile of discarded blankets. Then it moved. Thomas's instincts snapped to life. He threw the car into park, grabbed his coat, and stepped into the freezing night. The cold punched him in the chest, but he didn't hesitate. As he approached, the figure became clearer. A young woman, her body hunched over, one arm clutching her swollen belly. Her breaths were short and rapid, and her face was pale beneath the hood of an oversized jacket. She looked no older than her mid-20s. "Miss," Thomas crouched down. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes flickered open, wide and filled with terror. Her lips trembled, not just from cold but from pain. I can't. It hurts," she gasped. "Please don't let my baby die. Don't let my baby die cold." Her voice was barely above a whisper, cracked and desperate. "Are you in labor?" he asked, his voice tight with urgency. "Are you alone?" She gave a weak nod, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I have no one." Thomas's pulse quickened. He grabbed his phone, dialing emergency services with one hand while using the other to check her pulse and breathing. "This is Dr. Thomas Reed. I have a woman in active labor under the Wilson Street overpass. She's hypothermic and in distress. We need an ambulance immediately." "ETA, 15 minutes, the dispatcher replied. He cursed under his breath. 15 minutes was too long. He looked down at the woman who had started to moan low and deep, the way women did when contractions overtook them. "What's your name?" he asked, unbuttoning his coat and wrapping it around her shoulders. "Sarah," she whispered. "Sarah, listen to me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You and your baby are going to be okay, but we don't have time to wait. You're going to have to deliver right here." Her eyes widened. No, I can't." "Yes, you can," he said. "I'm a doctor. I've delivered hundreds of babies. You could trust me." She whimpered as another contraction ripped through her. She gripped his forearm with surprising strength. Thomas laid her gently on the coat, cushioning her head with his scarf. The ground was hard and cruel, but he didn't let that stop him. He quickly assessed her vitals, pulled on gloves from his medical bag in the trunk, and prepared as best he could. "You're fully dilated," he said. "You need to push, Sarah, with everything you've got." She screamed, the sound echoing off concrete and steel. "Good, just like that. You're doing great." The next minutes felt like hours. Thomas guided her through each contraction, his hands steady, voice low and encouraging. The city faded around them. No more traffic, no more cold, just a woman fighting to bring life into the world. Then suddenly, a small cry pierced the night. Thomas lifted the newborn into the air, heart pounding. A girl, tiny, pink, squirming alive. He quickly wrapped the baby in his shirt beneath the coat, pressing her against Sarah's chest to keep her warm. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "You did it." Sarah sobbed with relief, her arms trembling as she held her child close. The sound of sirens grew near, but Thomas barely heard them. He was too focused on the fragile, miraculous scene before him. Under the harsh glare of street lamps and the roar of an approaching ambulance, a child had taken her first breath, and something in Thomas's heart shifted quietly, powerfully, forever. The sirens grew louder until the ambulance finally skidded to a stop on the icy pavement. Paramedics rushed out, their movements fluid and precise, a dance rehearsed 1,000 times, but no less urgent. Thomas stayed close, brushing snow from Sarah's tangled hair as they gently lifted her onto the stretcher. He climbed into the back with her and the newborn, never letting go of her hand. Her skin was icy to the touch, her lips pale, and her breath came in shallow, stuttering gasps. "She's losing too much blood," he told the EMT, his voice tight with professional urgency. "She needs fluids, oxygen, and close monitoring immediately." The EMT nodded, already working. Thomas adjusted the oxygen mask over Sarah's face and pressed her fingers gently. Her eyelids fluttered. "Don't leave her. Please," she mumbled, voice no louder than a breath. "I won't," he said softly, leaning closer. "I promise she's safe. You both are." In the chaos of flashing lights and the steady beep of monitors, the ambulance raced through the night. Inside, Thomas's world had narrowed to two fragile beings, one who had already defied the odds and one who was still fighting. At the hospital, the moment he stepped out of the vehicle, recognition rippled across the emergency room staff. Thomas Reed wasn't just any doctor. He was a name, a symbol of excellence. Nurses made way instantly, and within seconds, Sarah was wheeled into a treatment room. Thomas handed the newborn to the neonatal unit, his hands gentle but firm. She was born in cold conditions. Hypothermia is a concern. Keep her under the warmer. Monitor oxygen saturation. "Yes, Dr. Reed," a nurse responded, taking the baby with careful precision. Thomas didn't sit down. He moved back and forth between Sarah's room and the neonatal unit, checking vitals, consulting with residents, and reviewing labs. His white shirt was wrinkled and damp from the storm. His tie loosened, hair a mess. But no one dared ask him to rest. There was something raw in his focus, something more than medicine at play. 2 hours passed. The blood transfusion had stabilized Sarah's vitals, and fluids had restored some color to her cheeks. When Thomas finally stepped back in her room, she was propped up against a pillow, her breathing easier, her expression distant but alert. She turned her head slowly when she saw him. Her eyes, though tired, held the same weary strength he'd seen on that rain-slicked sidewalk. "You stayed," she rasped. "I said I would," he replied, pulling a chair beside her bed. His voice had softened, stripped of the authority he used in operating rooms. Now it was just a man speaking to a woman he hadn't been able to stop thinking about. There was silence between them, thick with unspoken emotion. "Thank you," she whispered, looking down at her hands. "For everything. But I'll be leaving soon as I can walk." He frowned, forehead creasing. "Leaving? This place?" She nodded, eyes scanning the white walls and soft lighting. "It's too clean, too safe. It's not for people like me." "Sarah, you just gave birth under a highway," he said gently, searching her face. "You nearly died. Your baby could have died." "I know," she said, her voice clipped defensive. "But I've lived worse." He studied her, really looked at her. The hollow under her eyes, the bruises that weren't physical, the exhaustion that lived in her bones. "Where would you even go?" She hesitated. "Back to the park or under the Madison Bridge. It's not so bad if you find dry spot." "You were planning to raise a newborn like that?" Her shoulders tensed. "I've been on my own since I was 16. I'm not scared of it." "You shouldn't have to be," he said quietly. "Not anymore." She didn't reply. Her eyes flicked to the clock, then to the baby bag on the floor, like she was already calculating her exit. The next morning, Thomas stood outside her room, holding a plain paper bag. Inside, clean clothes, soft socks, travel-sized toiletries, and a pack of newborn diapers. When Sarah saw him walk in, she sighed heavily, bracing herself. "I told you," she said, arms crossed. "I'm leaving soon." "And I told you," he replied, setting the bag down gently. "You're not going back to the street." She narrowed her eyes. "Why do you care?" He didn't blink. "Because no one else does, and because you're not just anyone. You're the woman who gave birth in a storm and held her daughter like a warrior. You didn't give up. That matters." Her lip trembled, but she held herself still. "I have a place," he said, his tone softening. "It's quiet, safe. There's an old guest house behind my home. No one uses it. It's dry, warm, and private. You and your daughter can stay there as long as you need." She looked stunned and confused. "Why would you do that for me?" "It's not charity," he said firmly. "I'm not offering pity. I'm offering space, room to breathe, to think, to be something more than what the world keeps calling you." She blinked fast, eyes welling up. "And if I say no, then I'll still worry about that little girl sleeping in the cold." He paused. "But it's your choice." Sarah stared at him for a long moment, then slowly, Biting her lip to keep it from trembling too much, she nodded. Just until I find my feet. Thomas smiled, something soft breaking through the clinical distance. Deal. Later that day, as she settled into the passenger seat of his car, baby Emma nestled in her arms, the clouds finally parted. Sunlight spilled onto the dashboard. And for the first time in what felt like years, Sarah closed her eyes and let herself feel warm. Not just from the heat, but from the presence of someone who wasn't trying to fix her, just willing to stay. The guest house had become a sanctuary, warmed by heaters and soft sunlight. It was filled with potted plants, the scent of earth, and the gentle sounds of baby Emma cooing. Sarah had kept it immaculate, cleaner than any place she'd stayed in years. She found herself waking up earlier each day, tidying, folding tiny clothes, tending to the plants Thomas had let her care for. But what truly lit a fire inside her was the time she spent volunteering at the community clinic Thomas ran 3 days a week. After some convincing, Sarah asked him timidly one afternoon, "Do you think I could help? I mean at the clinic." Thomas had looked surprised, then nodded. "You want to work?" "I want to feel useful," she said quietly. "I don't have degrees or fancy training, but I can clean, organize, and talk to people. I've seen enough pain to know how to sit with someone through it." He smiled. "That's more qualification than most." So she began showing up early and eager. She helped with waiting room check-ins, made tea for nervous patients, and offered tissues to mothers holding ultrasound photos. Everyone who met her saw the kindness in her, even if she still struggled to see it herself. Then one late afternoon, just as the sun dipped low and Thomas was finishing up paperwork in his office, his phone buzzed. "Emma has a fever," Sarah said, panic threading her voice. "She's burning up, and I don't know what to do. I'm on my way." He drove straight there. Sarah met him at the guest house door, barefoot, eyes wide with fear, her hair in disarray. Emma was in her arms, flushed and whimpering. Thomas quickly took over, checking Emma's temperature, examining her ears, and monitoring her breathing. "It's a high-grade fever, but her lungs are clear. No dash. Might be viral." He crushed a fever-reducing tablet, mixed it in juice, and fed it gently to the baby, then soaked towels in lukewarm water to bring down her temperature. He worked with the quiet confidence of someone who had saved lives for a living. But in his every touch, there was care, not just expertise. Sarah watched from the corner, arms wrapped tightly around herself. As hours passed and Emma's temperature began to ease, Thomas stayed, sitting on the floor with her in his lap, whispering softly, rubbing her back until she drifted to sleep. "You didn't have to stay," Sarah whispered. He looked up at her, his voice low. "I didn't want to leave." She stared at him, her chest heavy. The words came slowly, the kind you hide for too long. "I was 19 when I met him. Mark thought he was my future. When I got pregnant, he told me I was ruining his life. His parents paid me to disappear. I had nowhere to go. Slept in shelters, on buses, under bridges." Her voice cracked. "When the contractions started, I was alone on a bench. I thought maybe it's better if we both didn't make it." Thomas's eyes darkened, but not with pity, with quiet, burning anger for the world that had failed her. "But you did make it," he said gently. "And you didn't just survive. You kept Emma alive every day with nothing but your will." Sarah wiped at her cheeks. "Sometimes I don't know how I'm still here." He stood, placing the sleeping baby in the crib. Then he turned to her. "You're here because you refuse to give up. That's more than strength, Sarah. That's grace." She looked at him, truly looked at him, and in his eyes saw no judgment, no rescue fantasy, only recognition. Recognition of a soul that had walked through fire and survived with love intact. It started with a knock, sharp, deliberate, and filled with a weight that made Sarah's entire body stiffen. She had just finished nursing Emma and was gently rocking her to sleep inside the guest house. The faint scent of soil and lavender filled the air. Outside, snow flurries danced against the frosted glass. The world felt quiet, like a rare moment of peace had finally found them. But then came the voice, low, unfamiliar, too sure of itself. "Sarah, you in there?" She froze, heart stuttering. She tiptoed toward the window and peered through the blurry frost. Her breath caught. 3 figures stood just beyond the garden path. One of them, tall and sharply dressed, wore the same arrogant smirk that had haunted her dreams for years. Mark. His coat was cashmere, his hair slicked back like always, his hands in his pockets like he owned the ground he stood on. Flanking him were 2 more, an older man in a tailored overcoat, and a woman with tight lips and a handbag that probably cost more than Sarah had ever made in a year. His parents. Her throat tightened. She instinctively moved in front of Emma's crib, shielding it with her body, then stepped outside slowly, clutching her jacket tighter around her chest. The cold bit through her thin sleeves, but it couldn't compare to the chill rising through her bones. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice stronger than she felt. Mark's smirk widened. "Long time no see, Sarah." His mother looked around the garden with open disdain. "So, this is where you've ended up. A guest house in someone else's backyard. How quaint." Sarah clenched her jaw. "What do you want?" Mark stepped forward, hands still in his pockets, posture relaxed, like this was just a casual visit. "We're here for Emma." She blinked, the words sinking like stones in her stomach. "What?" "She's my daughter," he said. "I have rights, and my parents and I agree. She shouldn't be growing up in a place like this. It's beneath her. She's not a toy you left behind, and now want to claim," Sarah snapped, stepping between them and the door. Mark's father took a step forward. His voice was cool, rehearsed, legal. "You're not married. You have no income, no fixed assets. You were, until recently, living on the streets. Your lifestyle is not fit for raising a child. And we've already filed a petition for custody." Sarah stumbled back, gripping the doorframe. "You can't do this. He left us. He abandoned us before she was even born. Let's not twist things." Mark tilted his head. "I offered you money. You chose the hard road. You offered me hush money to disappear. And yet," his mother cut in, "you still managed to trap a doctor into taking care of your mess. Clever girl." Sarah's face went white. "You don't know anything about us." "I know our granddaughter deserves better," the woman hissed. "That child carries her bloodline. She won't be raised by some gutter girl with a pity address." Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We've already got legal representation. If you cooperate, we'll be generous. If not, well, you know how these things go. You have nothing. We have everything. The courts will eat you alive, Sarah." Her vision blurred. Emma's soft breathing echoed from inside. And suddenly, the cold didn't matter. She slammed the door without another word. Inside, her knees gave out. She slid to the floor, clutching Emma against her chest, rocking back and forth. Her mind raced. Court dates, media, lawyers, and public humiliation. Losing Emma. No, 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 no. That night, she didn't sleep. The past came crashing down like a flood. Images of shelters, park benches, freezing nights with a growing belly, and no hope. And now, when she had finally found some stability, some warmth, it was all being ripped away. By morning, she had made her decision. She packed the bare essentials: diapers, formula, a blanket, and a change of clothes. She placed Emma in a sling across her chest and tucked the little girl's head beneath her chin. Her cheeks were damp with tears. At sunrise, she slipped out the back gate. Her feet moved quickly, urgently. She would run, just like last time, and no one would find her. Not Mark, not his money, not his power. But before she reached the alleyway, a voice broke through the fog. "Sarah." She spun around. Thomas. He stood in scrubs, his hair tousled, his coat half-buttoned. His car was parked crookedly on the sidewalk, hazard lights blinking. His eyes scanned her from head to toe. Her duffel, her swollen eyes, the baby in her arms. "Where are you going?" he asked, breathless. She looked down. "I have to leave. They're going to take her. I can't let that happen." "Sarah," he said, stepping closer. "You think running will keep her safe? You'll be alone again, hungry, sleeping in bus terminals." "I've done it before," she snapped. "What choice do I have? Mark has lawyers. He has money. They'll bury me in paperwork before I ever see a courtroom." "Not if I stand beside you." She froze. "Why would you do that? This isn't your problem." Thomas's voice softened. "It became my problem the moment you handed me Emma, trusting me to protect her life. I'm in this now, whether you want me to be or not." Sarah shook her head, tears spilling freely. "You don't understand. I see Aunt. I can't do this alone again." Thomas reached out, gently taking the strap of the sling from her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore." She looked at him, eyes wide with disbelief, years of pain and fear carved into every glance. And yet in that moment, standing on a back street in the gray of morning, with her daughter's heartbeat pressed to hers, something in his voice, in his steadiness, made her pause. And that pause was the first step towards something she had never dared hope for. Home. Rain pelted the pavement in heavy sheets, the street lights casting blurred halos across the slick asphalt. At the edge of the city's forgotten corners, a dimly lit bus stop flickered weakly under the downpour. There, Sarah stood shivering, her arms wrapped tightly around a bundled Emma, the infant softly whimpering against the cold in her mother's trembling chest. Sarah's hair was soaked, her coat clung to her skin, and her breath came in ragged bursts. The duffel bag at her feet sagged with damp clothes and formula, its zipper half broken, barely holding together. Tears mingled with the rain on her cheeks as she rocked Emma, whispering, "I'm so sorry. I'm trying." Headlights cut through the storm. A black SUV pulled up, tires hissing against the road. The door flew open, and Thomas stepped out, his own clothes quickly soaked. He walked straight to her, without hesitation. "Sarah," he said breathlessly, "what are you doing out here?" She looked up, startled, her face pale and stricken. "How did you? You left without saying a word. I knew where you'd go." His eyes moved to Emma, then back to Sarah. "You're freezing. Come on." "I can't," she whispered. "They'll take her. I can't go back. I can't let them win." "You don't have to let them win." "I have nothing, Thomas," she said, her voice cracking. "No lawyer, no house, no name. What court would ever choose me over them?" He took off his coat and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. Then he held her by the arms, firm but tender. "Sarah, you don't need to run anymore," he said, voice steady. "You're not alone." She bit her lip, eyes brimming again. "But I'm not strong enough for this fight." "Then let me fight it," he said, and his voice softened into something more intimate, something weighted with a decision made deep within him. "Marry me." Sarah blinked. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated. "Legally. If you're my wife and Emma is my legal stepdaughter, no judge will give her to them. I have standing. I have credibility. And I have the resources to keep you both safe." She stared at him as if he'd grown another head. "Thomas, you can't be serious." "I'm dead serious," he said. "This isn't about charity. It's about protection. About giving Emma a shield neither of us can offer alone." Sarah shook her head, stunned. "You don't have to do this for us." "I'm not doing it out of obligation," he said. "I'm doing it because you and Emma matter more than I expected. More than I'm ready to admit." Her lips parted, but no words came. She simply stared at him, 1,000 questions caught in her throat. Rain fell around them in waves, but neither moved. "You'd really do this?" she asked, almost afraid to believe it. "I would," he said. "Right now, if you'll let me." Sarah looked down at Emma, her baby's cheek pressed against her collarbone, tiny fingers curled into her damp sweater. Then she looked back at Thomas, this man who had delivered her child in a storm, who had offered her warmth when the world turned its back, who now stood soaked in the rain with a hand stretched toward forever. "Okay," she whispered. He didn't smile. He just nodded once, firmly, like he had just made a promise he would die keeping. Within an hour, they were at a 24-hour courthouse annex. The clerk on duty looked up from her desk in surprise as they entered, clothes still damp, a baby cradle between them. "We need a marriage license," Thomas said simply. "Tonight." Paperwork was signed and forms filed. Sarah's hand shook as she scribbled her name. And when the justice of the peace asked them to exchange vows, Thomas looked at her and said only one thing. "I promise I will protect you always." Sarah could hardly speak, but her lips trembled around her reply. "And I promise I won't run anymore." There were no rings, no music, no friends in attendance, just the hum of fluorescent lights, the weight of soaked clothes, and the sound of Emma's soft breathing in her arms. But when they stepped back out into the rain, now quieter, now gentler, something had changed. Sarah Reed. The name sounded strange, new, but it was hers now. And so was the man walking beside her. No longer strangers, no longer two people from different worlds. Now, legally, and for the first time emotionally, they were family. The afternoon sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the quiet street near Emma's daycare. Sarah had just picked her up. The little girl was bundled in a pink jacket, holding tightly to her mother's hand as they walked toward the corner. Sarah hummed a lullaby softly, smiling down at her daughter's sleepy eyes. But then she felt it, the sudden tension in the air, a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. From across the street, a black SUV screeched to a stop. The doors flung open, and Sarah's blood turned to ice. Mark's mother stepped out first, heels clicking on pavement, eyes burning with fury. Behind her, two large men in dark coats followed, their expressions unreadable. Then came Mark, his face twisted into a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sarah froze. "No, not here. Not now." "Sarah," Mark's mother shouted, her voice shrill and laced with venom. "You thought you could steal my granddaughter and parade her around like a prize?" Emma tightened her grip on Sarah's hand, instinctively sensing danger. Sarah backed away, heart pounding. "Leave us alone. You filthy little parasite," the woman snarled, striding forward. "You seduced that doctor and conned your way into our bloodline. But that baby is ours." Sarah turned, pulling Emma behind her, but one of the men grabbed her arm. She screamed, "Let go of me!" The other grabbed Emma, who began crying loudly, reaching for her mother. In a flash, Mark moved forward, eyes wild. "She belongs with us," he hissed. "Give her to me." "No," Sarah cried, clutching Emma to her chest. Mark lunged, his hands grabbing at the blanket wrapped around Emma. His mother shrieked behind him. "That child has pure blood. She's not meant to be raised by garbage." The sound of tires screeching pierced the chaos. A second later, a blur moved between them. Thomas, without hesitation, without a word, delivered a square punch to Mark's jaw. The force sent Mark stumbling backward, crashing to the sidewalk. The man who had grabbed Sarah released her, stunned. Thomas's eyes burned as he stepped between Sarah and the others, shielding her and Emma with his body. "Touch them again," he growled, voice low and shaking with rage. "And I swear to God, you won't leave here standing." "You assaulted him," Mark's mother screeched. "You attempted to kidnap a child in broad daylight," Thomas snapped back. "And you laid hands on my wife." The sound of sirens cut through the air. Blue and red lights flashed as two police cruisers pulled up to the curb. Officers leapt out, hands on weapons, barking orders. Sarah stood frozen, Emma sobbing against her chest, until one of the officers gently pulled her aside. "Ma'am, are you all right? Did they hurt you or your child?" She could barely speak. "They try to take her. They grab her." Another officer knelt by Mark, now handcuffed and groaning, while his parents screamed about lawsuits and lawyers. But none of it mattered anymore, because justice for once had arrived on time. All four were arrested on the spot for attempted kidnapping, assault, and harassment. Thomas gave his statement calmly, clearly, with the fury of a man who'd nearly watched his family be torn apart. Sarah was taken to the hospital to be checked for bruises. Emma was examined, but declared physically unharmed. Emotionally, though, both were shaken. That night, the news broke. Cell phone footage from a bystander. Mark's mother screaming insults, the scuffle, Thomas's punch, the police arriving, went viral. Headlines exploded. Millionaire doctor saves wife and baby from daylight attack. The mob attempted to kidnap the child. Father fights back. Dr. Thomas reads heroic defense of family melts hearts online. Social media overflowed with support. Justice for Sarah and Doctor with the Heart trended for days. People across the country posted messages of encouragement. Donations poured in for the Reed family's new foundation for single mothers. And Sarah's past was no longer a weapon used against her. It became her strength. As for Thomas, he was no longer just a doctor or a wealthy philanthropist. He was the man who stood in the storm and chose to fight, not just with fists, but with love. The garden behind the clinic was in full bloom. Wildflowers swayed in the soft breeze. White drapes fluttered from the wooden arch that stood at the center of the grassy courtyard. Paper lanterns lined the fence, and laughter echoed gently in the late afternoon light. It had been 1 year since the rain-soaked night when Thomas had asked Sarah to marry him, not for love, but for protection. But today, their marriage was not a legal necessity. Today, it was a celebration of love born from resilience, faith, and something unbreakable. Sarah stood behind a sheer curtain in a modest lace dress, her hair pinned with tiny white jasmine blossoms. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the hem, but her eyes sparkled with a quiet joy that radiated far beyond the fabric of the gown. She looked outside and saw the chairs filling with familiar faces. Nurses from the clinic, women from the shelter who had found their voice again, and mothers like her whom she now mentored. The New Haven Center, the nonprofit she had co-founded with Thomas, had already helped dozens of women escape abuse, homelessness, and hopelessness. The guest house where she once lived was now a warm community lounge filled with books, baby cribs, and fresh hope. Beside the arch stood Thomas, in a navy blue suit, adjusting his cuff while smiling nervously at the flower girls zigzagging through the rows of chairs. Sweetheart, you're not supposed to run just yet," he chuckled. The little girl turned in her puffed pink princess dress and ran straight into his arms. "But I missed you." He scooped her up, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You'll see me in a second when we walk Mommy down the aisle." "Okay, but I still get to throw flowers, right?" she asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "Every single one," Thomas grinned. The music began, a soft instrumental played by one of the clinic's patients on an old violin. Emma skipped forward, scattering petals, then twirled and waited at the front as Sarah stepped into view. Every head turned, every heart hushed. Thomas's breath caught as he saw her. She walked slowly, carefully, as if stepping into a life she had once only dreamed of. Her eyes never left his. When she reached the arch, he extended his hand. She took it, and the officiant began. But Sarah barely heard the words. She could feel Emma's tiny fingers laced with hers on one side and Thomas's steady grip on the other. The moment was complete. "Would you like to say your vows?" the officiant asked. Sarah nodded. Her voice was quiet but clear. "Thomas, when you asked me to marry you, it wasn't for love. It was to save me. But you didn't just save me. You gave me back myself. You gave Emma a future. You gave brokenness a home. From a promise I never expected, you created something extraordinary." Her eyes shimmered, from one lost soul to another. "Thank you for never letting go." Thomas blinked rapidly, then took her hands in his. "Sarah, I thought I knew what strength looked like. I saw it in surgeries, in success, in numbers. But then I met you, and you showed me that real strength is waking up when you want to disappear. It's choosing love when all you've known is fear." He paused, breath thick. "You showed me what family means, and it's not about blood or wealth or last names. It's about who you fight for, and I will fight for you every day for the rest of my life." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife, again, but this time for real." Cheers erupted. Emma clapped her hands wildly, and Thomas leaned in, kissing.